Hey everyone, I'm out here in the garage and what we're going to be doing today is fixing the high pressure AC hose on my truck. So stay tuned. So if you're new to the channel, I just want to welcome you here and hopefully you'll consider subscribing if you like what you see. Also, check out Car Apprentice on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I post lots of pictures and videos on those platforms before I post anything on YouTube. And occasionally I'll post things on those platforms I don't post on YouTube. Also, check out the website at carapprentice.com. And don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. So the AC system in my truck developed a slow leak a number of years ago. I never addressed it. I figured I could just recharge the system at the beginning of the summer and then get through the summer and repeat the process the next year. Well, as I was doing some maintenance on the truck, I happened to lean on the high pressure hose, which is the site of the leak, and all the refrigerant in the system vented. So I figured it was time to suck it up, just go ahead and do the repair so I wouldn't have to deal with this every single summer. So let's get into it. Before we start, I wanted to mention that a number of years ago, I watched some very good videos on the Ratchets and Wrenches YouTube channel that explain very simply how automotive AC systems work. So I would encourage you to check them out so you have a solid foundation and can follow along as I attempt this repair. The AC system in this truck is aftermarket by ARA Manufacturing that was apparently installed by the dealer. And I really didn't want to mess with it because there's very little information available and AC system repairs are not as straightforward as other types of vehicle repairs. Fortunately, in this situation, the damage was at the end of the hose and there was enough slack to be able to cut off the end and reattach it. If you have to replace this AC hose, the size is number 8. Let's start with safety, which is very important when working with AC systems. I'm wearing nitrile gloves and goggles, and I have the garage doors open for adequate ventilation. This is the FJC6697 manifold gauge set that we'll be using to check and charge the system. It works with both R134A and R12 systems. The set includes the manifold and gauges, a blue low pressure hose, a red high pressure hose, a yellow charge hose, and red and blue quick disconnects. We're going to hook up the gauge set to confirm the system is empty before I start working. First, we'll want to make sure the low and high side manifold valves are closed by turning them clockwise. Each of the gauge set hoses has 2 distinct couplers. One end includes a fitting for a Schrader valve and the other end is unrestricted. We'll connect the blue low pressure hose's non-Schrader end to the manifold gauge fitting, then do the same for the red high pressure hose. Unlike newer cars, connections are made directly to the AC compressor on this truck. There are 2 ports on the back of the compressor. One is labeled SUC for suction and the other is labeled DIS for discharge. The blue line gets screwed onto the suction port and the red line is screwed onto the discharge port. It's very important to not confuse the 2 connections. As I hook up the lines, I'm pulling on the connector so that it doesn't immediately contact the compressor Schrader valve as I screw it on, just in case there is a remaining charge in the system. As you can see, this system is totally empty at 0 pressure on both the low and high sides. If there were still a charge, I would need it professionally evacuated to avoid venting to the atmosphere. With the system empty, I should have installed some R134A quick disconnect adapters from a retrofit kit to make connecting and disconnecting the lines quicker and easier. This became a bit of a problem later when I finished charging the system and needed to disconnect the hoses. Alright, so we can go ahead with the procedure now that we know the system is empty. I'm going to start by cleaning off the high pressure hose with all-purpose cleaner so I don't contaminate the AC system when I go to cut and reattach it. To remove the clamp, I can use a large screwdriver or a socket on a ratchet. Then I just pull off the hose and clean off the fitting. I closed off the fitting with no residue duct tape to prevent anything from getting inside. To cleanly and squarely cut off the damaged section of hose, I used some hose cutters. With the hose cut, I slipped the clamp onto the end of it, removed the duct tape, then slipped the hose onto the compressor fitting and tightened the clamp. This part of the repair was finished, but we're still not done. The system has been open to the atmosphere via the leaky hose for several years, so I decided to replace the receiver dryer. It looks really old anyway. The primary function of the receiver dryer is to remove moisture from the system so it works efficiently. Before I installed the brand new receiver dryer, I wanted to pull a vacuum to boil the moisture out of the system and verify there are no leaks. So I borrowed this vacuum pump from the local AutoZone. This one seems to leak a lot of oil out the fill cap when turned on its side, but it still functions just fine. Also, don't forget to buy pump oil to fill it to the proper level. The manifold's low and high valves are still closed at this point, and we're going to connect the yellow line to the vacuum pump and the middle port on the manifold. Then it's just a matter of turning on the pump first and opening the low and high valves. This is the only time both valves are open when servicing the AC system. Usually only the low side is cracked open. I let the vacuum pump run for about 30 minutes, then closed the valves at the manifold and turned off the vacuum pump. Some like to let it run for up to an hour. The pressure should read around 29 to 30 inches of mercury, but mine only got to 28. As we'll see later with the new receiver dryer installed, it read about 29. I then waited another 30 minutes to see if the pressure would drop. 10 minutes is usually sufficient, but I wanted to be extra sure there were no leaks because the R12 refrigerant for this system is pricey stuff. Being overly cautious to avoid accidentally turning on the AC, I disconnected the negative battery cable. After confirming there were no leaks, it was time to replace the receiver dryer. I spent a lot of time hunting for an identical replacement since I couldn't find much information on this system. Also, I could tell the fittings on the receiver dryer were barbed, so it was going to be nearly impossible to remove the hose without cutting it off. And there wasn't much slack. After loosening one of the hose clamps, I tried prying off the hose with a screwdriver, but that didn't work. I then used a heat gun on a low setting to try to expand the hose to slip it off. That didn't work either. Resigning to having to cut the hose, I cleaned it with all-purpose cleaner first. I felt my way along the hose until I cleared the receiver dryer's barbed fitting, then I cut it with hose cutters. I plugged the line with a clean bolt to avoid getting debris in the system and repeated this process on the other side. Next, I loosened the metal strap holding the receiver dryer in place and removed the receiver dryer. Here's the receiver dryer by Murray that I found that was nearly the perfect size. The part number is 33280. Oddly enough, it's used in Fords. I needed to transfer the AC pressure switch over to the new receiver dryer, so I locked the old receiver dryer in the jaw horse and used a crescent wrench to remove the switch. The O-ring on the switch was replaced with one from a kit of nitrile O-rings I got from Harbor Freight. I don't think I actually needed the O-ring for the new receiver dryer though. After strapping in the new receiver dryer, I installed the hose to my left on it immediately and found what I already knew. The hose was too short on that side, so the receiver dryer needed to be relocated slightly. I decided to install the hose on the other side so I could figure out the new location. If you have to replace this hose, it's number 6. Once the hose was installed, I drilled a couple new holes for the strap, which I did off camera because I kept getting in the way of the camera. I covered the old holes with a little RTV. To finish the receiver dryer installation, I removed the protective sticker from the sight glass. I then reconnected the negative battery cable.